Imagine this. You're in a rush, something is happening, and you need to get to a hospital, or maybe there's an emergency at home. You race toward the emergency gate that's supposed to provide quick access, but when you reach it, you're met with a shocking sight. It's locked. Not only locked, but the reason for it is completely absurd. The gate that could potentially save a life is completely off limits, and it's all because of an entitled Karen from the HOA. This isn't some fictional story. It happened in a quiet neighborhood where people trusted the system, assumed their safety was a top priority, and relied on the emergency features designed for these types of situations. But sometimes, what we assume is always there for us can suddenly be taken away by someone who thinks they know better, someone who feels their rules should always trump the common good. That's exactly what this Karen did when she decided that her idea of security was more important than someone's life. Think about it. An emergency gate. The purpose couldn't be clearer, right? It's there to save time and provide a quick exit when you need it the most. Whether it's a fire, a medical emergency, or some other life-threatening event, the gate is meant to be your access point to safety. But in this case, it wasn't just an inconvenience, it was life or death. And the person who held the key to it all? A Karen who wasn't bothered in the slightest by the consequences of her actions. The thing is, this Karen wasn't trying to be malicious. Well, at least not at first. She wasn't trying to harm anyone directly. She wasn't thinking of the community's well-being, either. She simply believed that locking the gate, as she put it, would prevent people from wandering into areas they weren't supposed to. No thinking about the consequences. No consideration for what it might mean if someone actually needed that gate in a moment of urgency. Now, picture the moment the homeowner, who is already under stress, probably rushing to make sure everything is okay, runs up to the gate only to find it locked. Panic starts to rise. They pull on the lock. Nothing. No way to get through. And in that split second, their mind races. What now? How can they get to the hospital quickly? How can they ensure their child, or their loved one, gets the help they need in time? It's the kind of stress that no one should have to deal with, but it's made even worse when you realize it could have been avoided if just one person thought about the bigger picture. What's even worse? The Karen's response when confronted. No apology, no sign of remorse. In fact, she stuck to her position. She had locked it for security reasons, and no one was going to convince her otherwise. The HOA Karen believed her small action, locking that emergency gate, was a smart decision. But what about the rest of the neighborhood? What about the lives at risk? In her eyes, it didn't matter. After all, she had the authority. But the community, they weren't as understanding. The urgency of the situation opened their eyes to how dangerous this could have been. You see, while this Karen thought she was simply doing what was best for her version of safety, she was completely blind to the fact that safety isn't about restricting access. It's about making sure help can get to you when you need it most. This wasn't about keeping out unauthorized people. This was about life, and she had failed to see that. How many times have we trusted systems in place to help us, only to realize that those systems can easily be abused by the wrong person? This Karen thought she was doing the right thing, but her actions came at a high cost, potentially putting lives in jeopardy over something as simple as a locked gate. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It wasn't just a mild mistake. This could have been a deadly decision. And the most frustrating part? The homeowner had no way of knowing when this gate would be locked next. Was it going to be locked again during another emergency? Would this HOA Karen lock it again just to prove a point? Who knows? But the fact remains that her lack of consideration for the consequences of her actions created a dangerous situation. So what does this teach us? It's not just about Karen's entitlement or the HOA's unreasonable rules. It's about the risk of letting people in power make decisions that affect the lives of others. It's a reminder that we need to stay aware of those around us, the ones who think they know better than anyone else, and make sure they understand the potential harm their decisions can cause. The panic sets in quickly, like a wave crashing over you. The sense of urgency grows by the second, and your heart pounds as you rush toward the emergency gate. Time is slipping away, and every second feels like a lifetime. You're hoping, praying that this gate, this simple emergency exit, will be open, ready to help you in a time of need. But when you get there, It's not just closed. It's locked. Not a simple padlock either. It's sealed, like a barrier that you never thought would be there, not for something as vital as an emergency. What do you do now? Do you keep pushing against the gate, trying to force it open? Or do you turn back and try to find another way, knowing that time is slipping away and there's a child, a loved one, someone relying on you? Panic settles in quickly, but the frustration hits even harder when you realize that the reason you're facing this barrier is because of one person's selfish decision. An HOA Karen who thought she was just doing her job. This wasn't an accidental mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. No, this was a choice, a deliberate action to lock a gate that was supposed to provide life-saving access. And the reason? Security, she says, like that's supposed to make it okay. She believed that her rules and her control over the neighborhood mattered more than the safety of the people living there. A simple emergency gate meant to help in times of crisis, and she saw it as just another way to exercise power. Never once did it occur to her that there could be a real emergency when that gate would be the only way to get help. As you stand there, staring at that lock, you can feel the clock ticking. It feels like an eternity, each second stretching out longer and longer. You take a deep breath, your mind racing with options, none of them good. You look around, hoping someone will show up and offer a solution, but it's too late. The only option now is to find another way, but that might take precious time you don't have. The fact that this situation could have been avoided with a single moment of foresight from someone else is beyond frustrating. It's maddening. You wonder, what was going through her mind? Did she not think for 1 second about the lives at stake? Was her idea of security so important that it blinded her to the bigger picture? To the danger her decision created? Was it really about keeping the area secure, or was it about control, about asserting her authority and showing she had the power to do whatever she wanted, no matter the consequences? That's the crux of it, isn't it? Power. People like her don't think about the consequences of their actions because they feel like they can control everything around them. She wasn't thinking about how a locked emergency gate could delay life-saving help. She wasn't considering the impact her decision might have on anyone else. She only cared about what she thought was right, and that mindset is exactly what caused this dangerous situation in the first place. You can almost hear her justification, can't you? It's for security, she'd say, with that smug look of someone who believes they're in the right. But let's break it down. What kind of security are we talking about here? The gate was an emergency feature. It wasn't meant to restrict people, it was meant to provide quick access. That's the whole point. But no, to her, it was just another rule to enforce, another way to show her authority. And in doing so, she put everyone at risk. Now you're left standing in front of that locked gate, feeling helpless, frustrated, and angry. You know you need to act fast, but that simple lock stands between you and a solution. What if this was the moment that made the difference between life and death? What if this gate had been the only thing standing between a child and the hospital? It's all too easy to imagine, isn't it? The fear of not knowing what will happen next, of relying on a gate that was supposed to be there for safety, only to have it locked when it's needed most. And what does the HOA Karen do when she's confronted? She shrugs it off, of course. She justifies her actions, stubbornly defending her decision to lock the gate. It wasn't about safety, not really. It was about her being in control, about her feeling like she had the right to decide who gets to use the gate and when. She didn't see the bigger picture, the potential disaster that her little act of power could have caused. But the real question is, who else could have been affected by this? Who else was relying on that gate to stay open? The homeowner, desperate to find help, isn't the only one who would have been affected. The entire neighborhood was at risk. And that's what makes this story so maddening. The sheer thoughtlessness behind the decision, the disregard for the consequences, and the complete lack of empathy, it's enough to make anyone angry. The frustration doesn't end with the discovery that the gate is locked. It intensifies when you realize just how much control this HOA Karen has over the situation. She's not some distant figure. She's in charge of decisions that impact everyone's safety and well-being. And yet, she's more concerned with enforcing her personal sense of authority than actually thinking about the consequences of her actions. In this moment, it becomes painfully clear, The sense of security that we expect from our neighbors, from our communities, is often just an illusion. And when people like her are given too much power, that illusion shatters. What gets even more maddening is that she doesn't even seem to understand the gravity of her mistake. She wasn't thinking about the bigger picture. If anything, she was too focused on her personal agenda. The logic behind her decision to lock the gate. Security. But when you think about it, security isn't about locking people out, it's about allowing access in times of crisis. The gate wasn't just a barrier, it was an essential safety feature. It existed for one purpose, to be there when you need it the most. And yet, Karen, in her infinite wisdom, decided that her need for control was more important than a community's well-being. The more you think about it, the more it becomes clear how deeply misguided her actions were. This wasn't about keeping people out of a private space or enforcing rules for the sake of order. It was about life and death. It was about ensuring that in a moment of chaos, there was a clear path to safety. But she didn't care about any of that. She had made her decision, and to her, it was final. The needs of the community didn't matter. Only her interpretation of security did. Now imagine the emotional roller coaster you'd be on if you were the one trying to get through that gate. You're dealing with the panic of an emergency, the weight of knowing that every second matters, and then you hit the wall of a locked gate. A gate that's supposed to be there to protect you and your family. What goes through your mind in that instant? The clock is ticking, and all you can do is stare at that lock, knowing that a simple oversight, or rather, a deliberate act, has put you in this position. You try to force the gate open, but it's no use. It's locked, and there's nothing you can do about it. The frustration builds, the panic rises, and you can't help but feel the pressure of the situation. Meanwhile, the HOA Karen continues to live in her bubble, unaware or indifferent to the chaos she's caused. She probably thinks it's no big deal. After all, in her mind, she's just following the rules. But the reality is, those rules were never meant to harm anyone. They were meant to keep people safe. That was the entire purpose behind creating the emergency gate in the first place. It wasn't a luxury or a convenience, it was a necessity. And yet, she ignored that need. To her, rules were more important than safety, authority more valuable than people's lives. As the minutes pass, you realize that this situation is only going to get worse unless something changes. You start to consider other options, trying to figure out how to get around this obstacle, but every path you think of feels like it's too late. You could waste precious minutes looking for someone to unlock the gate. You could try to climb over, but who knows how long that would take. Every second feels like a lifetime, and every decision you make feels wrong. The sense of helplessness is overwhelming, and it only intensifies when you think about the fact that this could have been entirely preventable. All it would have taken was for someone to simply unlock the gate. But Karen didn't think of that. Her mind was locked just as tightly as that gate. She didn't think about the real, human consequences of her actions, about how her decision could have delayed someone's access to life-saving help. And it's not like she was just some stranger. She was someone who was supposed to be a part of this community, someone who should have had a vested interest in its safety. But no, she didn't care. All she cared about was control. In the end, the damage was done. There was no going back. The community had already been put at risk, and the feeling of betrayal lingers long after the situation has been resolved. It's a reminder that the people in positions of power don't always have the best interests of others at heart. They're not always thinking about how their decisions will affect the people around them. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? That the person in charge of something as important as emergency access could be so oblivious to its true purpose. And the worst part? This could have happened to anyone. This wasn't a unique situation. This was a reminder that, when given power, people can forget the basic principles of community, safety, and empathy. It's a lesson that stays with you long after the gate is unlocked, long after the immediate danger has passed. Because when someone in charge makes a selfish decision, it doesn't just hurt the people directly involved, it hurts the entire community. And that's something that shouldn't be ignored. At this point, things have already escalated far beyond what anyone should ever expect in a neighborhood. The tension in the air is thick. You can feel it building as you stand there, staring at the locked gate, heart racing, wondering how everything went so wrong. You look back at the moments leading up to this, everything that led to this one point where an entitled HOA Karen had control over something that was never hers to own. The desperation that comes with not knowing if you'll be able to reach help in time is almost unbearable. The panic is palpable, and every second that ticks by feels like it's slipping away from you, dragging the very safety of your loved ones with it. What's even more infuriating is that this isn't a case of someone making a harmless mistake. This wasn't an oversight or a momentary lapse in judgment. No, this was a choice made by someone who thought her authority over the neighborhood gave her the right to make decisions that could impact everyone else. All this time, you've been struggling with the consequences of someone else's sense of superiority. And it wasn't just an inconvenience or a minor issue. It was a life or death decision, and that's what makes it so hard to swallow. You know that feeling when you're waiting for someone to acknowledge the problem, to see the urgency of it, but no one is moving fast enough? That's the point when you start to realize the true weight of the situation. The HOA Karen, in her infinite wisdom, isn't just being stubborn. She's actively putting lives in danger because she can't see past her own rules and regulations. Her refusal to acknowledge the seriousness of the moment is what stings the most. If she had just understood the real consequences of her decision, if she could just see beyond her rigid interpretation of the rules, then maybe this wouldn't have happened at all. Every moment that goes by without anyone taking action only intensifies the feeling of helplessness. You keep hoping someone else will show up, someone who can fix the mess that this Karen has created. But that's the thing about this kind of situation. It's out of your control. You're left hoping that someone will come through, but you have no way of knowing if or when that will happen. Time, which was already slipping away, feels even more precious now, and yet, it's slipping through your fingers faster than ever. It's maddening to think that everything could be fixed with a single key turn, a single action that could make all the difference. But she refuses to unlock the gate, and you're left fighting a clock that's growing louder and louder in your ears. What makes it worse is the complete disconnect between the situation and her response. To her, it's all just part of the job. She doesn't understand the bigger picture, the lives that could be affected. She doesn't understand that locking that gate wasn't just a harmless rule enforcement. It wasn't about keeping out unauthorized individuals. It was about saving lives in a real emergency. She's so caught up in her own narrow view of security that she can't comprehend how dangerous her actions truly are. And as you stand there, trying to figure out what to do next, you can't help but feel the weight of her ignorance. As time drags on, the question that keeps circling in your mind is, how can she not see it? It's almost surreal. The solution is so simple. Open the gate. That's it. A decision that could prevent something awful from happening. Yet, there she stands, unwilling to budge. The person who is supposed to make sure the community is safe, the person who's supposed to care about the well-being of those around her, has instead chosen to turn a blind eye to what's at stake. The more you think about it, the more it becomes clear how small decisions can snowball into something so much bigger than anyone intended. She thought she was in control, thought that enforcing her rules would somehow make the community better or safer. But what she didn't realize was that her actions were having the exact opposite effect. She wasn't keeping anyone safe. She was making things worse. Every minute that goes by, every second that you stand there, knowing you're wasting valuable time, you realize how crucial it is to have people who truly understand the responsibilities that come with power. The kind of responsibility that takes into account the lives of others. The kind of responsibility that Karen clearly didn't take seriously. And so you start to wonder, how often does this happen in neighborhoods, in communities, in places where we're supposed to feel safe and protected? How many times have people like her used their little bit of power to make decisions that impact everyone else, only to brush off the consequences? And when they do, how many lives are at risk because of their ignorance, because of their unwillingness to think beyond their own authority? It's terrifying to think about. In the midst of the chaos, it becomes clearer than ever that entitlement can be a dangerous thing. It's not just about the moment, it's about the ripple effect that one person's actions can have on an entire community. All it takes is one person with the wrong mindset to create a mess that nobody can clean up. And while you're still standing there, fighting the clock, fighting the frustration, it becomes even more apparent that this isn't just an isolated incident. This is a wake-up call about how easily people in power can make decisions that affect others, how fragile our safety can be when one person's selfishness outweighs everything else. As the situation drags on, the urgency builds, and you can't help but feel the frustration grow with each passing second. You keep looking at that locked gate, knowing what's at stake, and wondering how someone could be so blind to the consequences of their actions. The Karen in question doesn't seem to grasp the severity of the situation. To her, she's just following the rules. And yet, in that moment, it feels like the world is crumbling around you. The weight of the responsibility rests entirely on her shoulders, and the longer she refuses to open the gate, the heavier it becomes. The silence in the air is deafening. You're stuck in this moment of tension, time slipping by and the potential for disaster growing with each second. You wonder what she's thinking. Does she even understand the panic that's setting in for everyone involved? Does she have any idea that by locking that gate, she could be costing someone their life? The stakes are high. The tension palpable. And there she stands, resolute, as if her decision to lock that gate was somehow more important than the very lives of the people she's supposed to be looking out for. The more you stand there, the more you realize just how fragile the balance of power is in situations like these. The authority she holds, the control she wields over something as essential as an emergency gate, has the potential to cause untold harm. All she had to do was unlock the gate. Just a single action, and the entire emergency situation could have been resolved. But in her eyes, her need to enforce the rules was more important than any of that. At this point, the tension in your chest feels like a vice, tightening with each minute that passes. Every time you glance at the locked gate, the weight of it all seems to hit harder. You can't escape the sinking feeling in your stomach, the creeping dread that something awful could happen because of this one, selfish decision. You try to hold it together, try to push through the panic, but it's hard when you're up against someone who's completely out of touch with the reality of the situation. It's maddening to think about, isn't it? The idea that someone like her could hold so much power over the lives of others and use that power so recklessly. To her, it's all just about enforcing the rules. But it's never just about the rules. It's about understanding the context, about recognizing the bigger picture. The rules are there to protect people, to ensure safety in times of crisis, not to be used as tools of control or dominance. Yet, here she is, wielding that power in the most dangerous and thoughtless way possible. And what makes this situation even worse is the fact that it's so easy to imagine how things could go horribly wrong because of her refusal to open the gate. In that moment, you realize that the consequences of her actions don't just affect you. They affect everyone who depends on that gate to do its job. What if something worse had happened? What if someone else's life was at risk because she thought enforcing a rule was more important than saving a life? It's a terrifying thought, one that sticks with you long after the situation has passed. The worst part is that this wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't just one bad decision. It's a stark reminder of how small, seemingly insignificant actions can have ripple effects that spread out and affect everyone around you. You think back to how easy it would have been for her to see the error of her ways. A simple change in perspective, a willingness to listen, and the situation could have been resolved in an instant. But she didn't listen. She didn't care. She didn't consider the bigger picture. Her idea of security was narrow, rigid, and, in the end, incredibly dangerous. She couldn't see past her own power, couldn't imagine a situation where someone might be depending on that gate to survive. It's a sobering realization. The world doesn't work in neat little boxes, where rules are black and white and consequences are always clear. The truth is, people are often put in positions where they have to think beyond the rules, to make decisions based on what's right, not what's convenient or easy. And when people like her, people who are so consumed by their own need to control, forget that, the damage they cause can be far-reaching and profound. As you stand there, still staring at the locked gate, the frustration grows. The feeling of helplessness is overwhelming. You know what needs to be done, but there's nothing you can do to change the situation. She's in control. And she refuses to acknowledge the reality of what she's done. The moment drags on, and you start to wonder if this will ever end, if there will ever be a resolution. And in the back of your mind, you keep asking yourself the same question. How many more people like this are out there, people who hold power and use it recklessly, without any regard for the impact their decisions have on others? How many more situations like this will unfold, where someone's selfishness or lack of understanding leads to real harm. As the seconds stretch into minutes, you can't help but feel the weight of it all. The damage has already been done, and the consequences will be felt long after the situation resolves. But one thing is certain: people like her shouldn't be in charge of things that matter so much to others. Power without empathy, without foresight, is a dangerous thing. You feel like you're stuck in a never-ending loop, waiting for someone, anyone, to step up and fix the situation. The helplessness is unbearable, and with every second that passes, it feels like the odds are growing more and more against you. Time is ticking down, and the longer you stand there, the more you realize how fragile everything really is. The Karen who locked the gate doesn't seem to get it. To her, this is just another case of following the rules without understanding the larger picture. But for you, it's personal. For you, it's life or death. Every passing moment feels like a reminder that this situation could have been avoided with a simple decision. And yet, here you are, fighting the clock, fighting someone who's not willing to budge. The worst part about this is how easily it could have been resolved. A quick decision, a simple action. Unlock the gate. That's all it would have taken. But instead, you're standing there, frustrated, watching her ignore the cries for help. It's one of those moments where everything feels like it's spiraling out of control, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. The Karen's indifference to the reality of the situation feels almost surreal. How can someone be so blind to the consequences of their own actions? How can they not see that their small, seemingly inconsequential decision is having life-altering effects on everyone else? You begin to think about the power dynamics at play here. The power she holds over the situation, over your safety, and the safety of those around you, is immense. And yet, she's using it in the most reckless way possible. The more you reflect on it, the more you realize that this isn't just about a locked gate. It's about control. She's not thinking about what's best for the community, for the people who rely on that gate to ensure their safety. She's thinking about how she can assert her dominance, how she can bend everyone to her will. That's what makes this so frustrating. She's more interested in being right, in enforcing rules, than in doing what's actually needed in this moment. And the longer it goes on, the more you start to feel the weight of the situation. It's like a pressure building in your chest, tightening with every second that passes. You keep thinking about how everything could have been different if she had just acted with even a little bit of empathy, with a little bit of consideration for what others might be going through. But she didn't. She didn't think about anyone else. She didn't think about the consequences of her actions. And now, you're left to pick up the pieces of a broken situation. The sense of powerlessness is overwhelming. You try to keep your calm, but you can feel the panic creeping in. There's a fire in your chest, an anger that you can't quite contain. You want to scream at her, to make her see what she's done, but you know it won't help. It's too late for words. The damage has been done, and you're just stuck in this moment of frustration and helplessness, watching as every second drags by. You begin to think about the implications of this moment. If she had been more thoughtful, if she had considered the bigger picture, none of this would have happened. But she didn't. And it's not just about the immediate effects of her actions, it's about the precedent it sets. If someone in her position can get away with putting people at risk for the sake of their own control, what does that say about the systems we rely on? What does it say about the safety of the community as a whole? As time continues to tick away, you realize just how fragile the safety net around you is. This gate, this simple barrier, was supposed to be a line of defense, a way to keep everyone safe in an emergency. And yet, here it is, the very thing that's preventing you from reaching the safety you need. It's a stark reminder of how easily things can go wrong when someone fails to do their job, when someone decides that their need for control outweighs the well-being of others. The more you think about it, the more you realize that this situation isn't just an isolated incident. It's part of a larger pattern of behavior that's becoming all too common. People in positions of power, people who are supposed to protect and serve the community, making selfish decisions that hurt those around them. And the worst part? It's not even a rare occurrence. It happens every day, in different ways, in different places. Power and control become the focus, and safety and responsibility fall by the wayside. In this moment, it feels like the world is upside down. You're standing there, waiting for someone to step in, to fix it, and yet it feels like you're the one who has to take charge. You have to be the one to fix the problem, to make it right. It's maddening to think that this all could have been avoided with just a little consideration. If she had simply opened the gate, things would have gone back to normal. But now, the consequences of her actions are out there, and they're not easily undone. You can't help but feel the weight of it, the sense of betrayal that comes from someone who should have known better but chose to ignore the obvious. And yet, as the situation continues to unfold, the frustration only grows. It's hard to escape the thought that this moment could have been a turning point, a chance for things to be done the right way. Instead, it feels like the point of no return has passed, and you're left with the aftermath of someone else's recklessness. The Karen has won, for now. But you're left wondering how much longer this kind of behavior can be allowed to go unchecked. How many more people will suffer because of the same entitlement, the same disregard for others' needs?